I think it's hard to argue that Pokémon Crystal isn't the best game on the Game Boy Color. I've played this game so many times before, and restarting it and playing it again has kind of reignited my love for the series. So welcome back, friends and colleagues, to another Game Boy related video. In this one we're playing Pokémon Crystal on my CRT here through RetroArch on Steam. I played it for about 2.5 hours, and the point of this series is to think about how we can learn from the classics. And I think that the beginning of a game is arguably the most important in teaching your player how the game works and how they should approach challenges as they move forward. And like I said, because I played this game so many times before, I actually played it a little bit differently this time. I went off of the catchphrase, gotta catch 'em all, and I was actively seeking out and trying to catch as many Pokemon as I could as I played. When I normally play this game, I just follow the story almost as closely as it lets me. I might come into a challenge on that story path that means that I have to level up one of my Pokemon, and then I can go back and defeat somebody who needs defeating. That's normally how I play it, but this time I actually feel like I had more fun. I maybe grinded a bit too much, and we'll get to that a bit later. But the first thing that you notice when you turn on Pokemon is how amazing the music is. I think The Legend of Zelda was up there as well. But you can just see how people fell in love with this game purely from the music. And I've played Pokemon Red probably just as much as I've played Crystal. And I think the music is just as good in that too. I think that in here in Pokemon Crystal, the sound effects are also on that level. And I'll talk about that in a bit as well. But yeah, just the sound design is out of this world, and the fact it's on a Game Boy is amazing. And it's such a shame, at the end, I was going through the settings to see what, things I could mess with before I turned it off. And there's an option for stereo sound. And obviously the Game Boy technically has stereo sound, but it only has one speaker, I think. And I don't know about the Game Boy Color, to be honest. But as soon as I pressed stereo speaker, it was like the game just, doubled in size. And because I'm playing through these computer speakers, it literally just came alive, and I was like, I wish I had played it with stereo sound on for the last 2.5 hours. So I think I might have to go back and play this a bit more. Maybe I'll stream it. Let me know if you want to see me stream this, because I think it's one of the good ones. Alongside the music in the beginning, there is an impressive animated intro. And in Metroid, I talked about how it quickly gets into the gameplay and how I liked that in that game. But here, I think it actually sets the scene and creates a world and kind of makes you feel like it's the anime, or it's worth spending your time on, if that makes any sense. Almost like it's not really a cutscene that's had live action actors, but it just feels like it's more there's more time and effort put into this than just here you go, here's the game. And I think that's a balance that we may not have explored yet in this series, of how should you put a lot of effort into an intro, or should you just give them the gameplay? I think personally, as solo developers who are making maybe very gameplay focused games, the jumping into the gameplay is a good idea. But if you're making a very heavy story game, maybe there would be an argument for the dense story or impressive animations to kind of pull them in and make them think that it's a higher quality, right? And the idea would be that you have to match that quality throughout the entire game. If you remember in one of my last ones, I said that I haven't played the end of Metroid 2, so I don't know if the quality decreases, but as a player at the beginning of a game, you kind of have to assume that the quality will stay where it is. So in this video, I'm going to kind of outline 4 different things. I'm going to talk about what is Pokemon to begin with, in case you didn't know. I'm then going to talk about the programming and just the fact that it's impressive how well programmed this game is. Then I'm going to talk about the design, some of the specific design choices that were chosen that kind of do link into the programming. And then finally, the juice. And we talked about this in the Zelda video, how feedback, sound effects, animations, screen shake, stuff like that, it gives the player a sense of space within the world, and helps connect them when otherwise it might be a very dry and disconnected experience. And obviously this stuff has to be designed, but I think it's good to focus on it as its own thing. And we'll talk about the influences as well at the very end of what I think people have got from this game we see too much of, or maybe we don't see enough. So, what is Pokémon? It's a RPG collectathon game, I guess I'd say, where you battle monsters. It's an RPG battle system in which you have one monster versus another monster at a time. And the idea is that you collect them, you can evolve them by leveling them up and gaining experience, and teaching them new moves and skills, giving them berries and stuff to hold on to so that they're affected during battle or even just generally. It's a very deep system, really. There's a Pokédex with hundreds of, I think it's 155 if I'm correct, Pokémon in each version or something. And the idea is to collect them all. And you can only have 6 in your party at one time, but there's a computer that can hold all of them. And I think that one of the main selling points of this game is that it's very cute. My favorite Pokemon is Pidgeot, I think it's called, and it just looks so cute. I think Pidgeotto is the second one, and it's not as cute. But then the third evolution is even cooler than the first, and it's still cute, so maybe it's the third evolution I like the most, but I can't remember what it's called. But alongside this like idea of collecting and like these battles, the world that you're put into has some conflict in it. In the Pokemon Red, there was like Team Rocket, and you had to like help defeat them. I think that was the general idea. In this one, you have been set on a task to basically help the professor do something, but then somebody steals one of the professor's Pokemons, and then it's like how that all unfolds. And I think if I'm correct, there's like an underground crime syndicate in this one as well that you have to defeat, if I remember correctly. I remember breaking into a gang's hideout, but maybe I'm mistaken. I didn't get that far in this one. Like I said, I spent a lot of time kind of grinding. So there is a story in the game that pulls you through the map, because technically there's multiple things the player can be focusing on. Number 1, the story. Number 2 would be collecting all the Pokemon. Number 3 would be exploring, like actually trying to find everything, like generally, like space-wise. And then finally, a personal one would be upgrading or evolving and collecting like the best group of Pokemon you can find, and like trying to think about how the synergies of how they work together maybe, and how you can create the best fighting team. So basically, if you've ever studied game development, there's like these archetypes of players that like want to achieve or to dominate or to explore or to, I don't know, whatever the story one is. And Pokemon appeals to all of them. It's not just a simple like Tetris where it's, you know, trying to get the highest score as quickly as you can. There is a lot to do and think about. There's characters to interact with. You can literally name your character, your personal player. You can name every single Pokemon. You can change out the moves of each Pokemon. You can choose which Pokemon are in your party, right? There's a lot of control you have as a player that I think puts this game very high in people's minds. It's not an on-rails game, although there's only a certain route you can go in the very beginning, and I've talked about this before, that although we love open-world games, I think it's important for the player in the beginning to walk a predefined path in order to teach them step by step what you need to be doing. But I think I'll get to that more in the design bit, because first of all, I want to talk about the programming. And context-wise, we need to remember that I make Game Boy games using GB Studio. And although that's a drag-and-drop game engine that lets us make Game Boy games in like the modern times, it's not this end-all be-all of how to make Game Boy games, right? It is quite limited when it comes to coding specific things beyond what the built-in stuff does. And that's why GBVM might be better for you if you're trying to make a Pokemon game, for example, is because the scale of what you can do in GB Studio might be limited. And that's why it's so impressive that this game existed like 26 years ago, is because it's such a high quality level, programming-wise, that I don't think I could reach right now. The fact that the player gets their own name and then the characters all reference that might seem insignificant to like if you're using, you know, Unity or Unreal or something, you can literally just use strings. But I don't think they had that programming capability necessarily. And if they did, we don't have it in GB Studio. So we have to use a variable-based system where each like letter is a variable, and it displays each letter, you know, collectively. It's a kind of deep programmed thing that we have to work around. I also think it's really impressive how the menus are programmed. If you press start when you're just walking around, it pops up and it keeps you in the world. It's so tempting as a designer, and I guess as a programmer, to like take you to a new scene that has just the menu. But keeping the player in the world, it means that you have to worry about other things, like other sprites being hidden. Is it working correctly? You know, how is the player orientated in the scene? Where are you going to put the menu so you don't cover the player if you don't want to cover the player? There's like a lot to think about, and they did it pretty damn cleanly. So I'm impressed with that. And then obviously the most impressive programming feat is the Pokédex. I actually don't know how. Actually, I think I do know how they fit so many Pokemon onto the Game Boy and have like, it basically has, it blows my mind actually how they did it. I think there's like memory switching. The idea that there's like memory banks and you switch between them. So basically there's like the game that's running right now with all the world and everything. And then there's one that's holding all the data on all the Pokemon you've picked up. And there might be another one or something with like just like the stats of the Pokemon. And I guess cooling between those memory banks is how you can create a huge game. It just blows my mind. The programming on this is insane. It's not cheap or quick, right? You can imagine, you know, like in the 80s they had that, like the gaming crash or something where they couldn't sell those copies of that E.T. game that was the worst game you've ever seen if you ever Google it. I might put up a little pic right now of what it looked like. And they just couldn't sell it, and it was like they were churning out awful games. But Pokemon is not that. It's like there is so much labor of love and testing gone into this. I think there's only like a couple documented bugs, and they're like interesting, like game-breaking bugs that like you'd have to like try and do, and then people manipulate and somehow, you know, like beat the game quicker through it, you know, stuff like that. It's not like, oh, the game is just crap. It's like fun, like deep accidents, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's the programming of this game is insane. If you have never played Pokemon for the Game Boy or Game Boy Color, I highly recommend going checking it out and admiring the programming that was being done in the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s. It's amazing. It really is amazing. It inspires me, and I hope it inspires you. I almost moved on without talking about trading. Obviously, I didn't do any trading in this, right? But they were hinting to it in the design, which I'll talk about, where they basically give you a character that is pretending to be like a real person in real life, kind of. And then it does an example of how trading works. Like I traded my Bellsprout for an Onix, and then it meant that the XP of the Onix is actually like, it's like 50% more, I think, you get by having a traded Pokemon. And obviously, they did this really as a marketing trick, and it helps. It's using the Game Boy for what it was designed for. The idea you can use the link cable, but it was also encouraging you and your friends to connect and trade Pokemon. Like, I kind of want to help my friends get a Game Boy with Pokémon Crystal on it so that I can trade with them, you know? It's great design. But the programming of that, I've tried programming a system, if you've seen my series of Battleship on the Game Boy, where it basically sends moves back and forth. And it's so temperamental, and like, I can't fathom how they programmed it so cleanly. It's amazing. I guess, yeah, the utter professionals, because yeah, it's so cool, it's so fun. And then one last thing on the programming is how the Pokemon gain experience, and how there's like this system where they clearly have like a value they need to hit, and every Pokemon seems to be different, that lets them get to the next level. And then some levels it will be the level that they get their evolution, or they get certain moves. Like just that system of getting experience and upgrading, I find extremely impressive. Like, there is obviously, it might be connected to that memory bank thing I talked about, where there's like data held elsewhere that has to be pulled in on those certain moments. But yeah, it blows my mind, all of that. Now I want to move on to design, because I feel like the design is where most of us might be, thinking about game development, and how either the world is constructed, how the story is constructed, and also how the gameplay folds into all of that. If you really think about Pokemon, it is a menu game where you move from point to point in order for the menus to have different visuals. If you want to really boil it down and like take away some of what it is to get to the root of it, when you're in the battle, if you turn off animations, it's basically just menus and stats. If you don't have a visual player moving around, imagine if you zoomed out all the way to like the massive map and you just had a little cursor moving around rather than a player. It's very variable and menu based. There's not really any real-time action that necessarily takes place. Only when you like walk in front of a certain character or walk through the grass and then things happen does it kind of feel like your input mattered in terms of how quickly you might have done something. And even then, there's not really ever any time limit. I think later on when you go to like the zoo or something, whatever it's called, a national park kind of thing, and you can collect like these rarer Pokemon in that specific location. I can't remember what it's called. Let me know what it's called in the comments if you know what I'm talking about. But that has a time limit on it, and that might be the only time when the time limit matters. But I'm saying that, and it's said that there are Pokemon that only show in the nighttime. Obviously I'm playing it in the daytime, and there's a real-time clock, which I didn't talk about in the programming section, but I guess that's a design choice as well, where if you have a real-time clock, you can give the player certain things at certain times of day. I think that's really cool. Personally, I wouldn't want that in my game, but I can see how a massive corporation who is trying to get people to like interact with their game more and have real-time or real-world events happen, can trade with real people in real life, that having a real-time clock is kind of important. So I won't beseech them for that. But yeah, the game is very menu-based, so you're going to be choosing what Pokemon you're going to have. You're going to be choosing what attack you need to do. You need to be choosing what Pokeball you're going to be doing, There's a lot of menus, and I think that the fact that you walk around this world and you talk to little characters and the pictures of the Pokemon are so cute and how they're animated, I think they've balanced it so well. I know a lot of people, if you design a game too menu heavy, it stops being a game and starts feeling like a spreadsheet. That's like something people normally say. So I think that Pokemon has got that balance right. And maybe you need to think about that balance in your game too. Like how much you walking around. Like, because you can imagine as well, if you never bumped into anyone, and if the long grass never triggered an attack, and it took forever and ever to get from town to town, the game would be then balanced in the opposite direction, where it's way too walking around heavy, and there's nothing to take my mind off that, It would be boring in that sense. I think, like I said, they got the balance basically just right. And I think obviously they had a lot of money behind them at this time, and doing the game testing was probably an incredibly important part that maybe as solo developers we might forget these days. But even in Pokemon Red, I feel like they had the balance right. Just the core design is spot on, chef's kiss. And then the story for me is how they best deliver the teaching moments. Like I was talking about how we want to learn to play the game, but without feeling like we're being forced or it's being shoved down our throat, right? We want to kind of learn it at our own pace. And so they were kind of drip feeding me the progression points. You leave your house and you don't have a Pokemon yet, so you're learning movement skills, menu skills, right? You're kind of getting your bearings in that sense. And then you talk to a few people, so now you got a grip of everything. Then you go pick up your first Pokemon, and the story encourages you to move out of the little town that we were just in. So now with that Pokemon, we can now go in the long grass and have battles and talk to more people. But they haven't given us the attacks yet that were like, when you walk in front of someone and then the exclamation mark comes up and it goes, ooh, and the battle music comes on. That doesn't happen until later on in the game. All we have right now is trying to get to I think it's Professor Pokemon or something, his house. And to get there, we have to go through the grass. And going through the grass triggers the random encounters of the very easy to defeat Pokemon. And we can't catch them yet. We haven't been given any Pokeballs. So we're not onto the collecting yet. We're only learning how to do the battles. We don't have to think about all the stuff in our inventory, right? We haven't collected a million things in our inventory and we're not worrying about anything yet. We're purely just attacking. And with our Pokemon, I think I might have had like Tackle and something else maybe. And then you just move on through, get to the first Poke Center, and you can heal your thing. You can even like talk to more people. There's a little guy in that village who walks you around and shows you stuff to do, and that's useful. That's literally like a tutorial, right? And you can even say no. So if you played it before, you don't have to sit through it again. And you slowly get to the point in which you get to his house. And then he gives you an egg. And this is the like real first part of the story where it's like uncovering how Pokemon are born or made or whatever, because apparently it hadn't been addressed yet in the series. So yeah, this is where eggs are introduced. And then as you walk back, you come across the person who was looking through the window of Professor Elm's window, and he's stolen one of the Pokemon that you didn't choose. And I believe he's chosen one that is best suited for defeating yours. So yours kind of has to be not too low of a level in order to beat them. I think when I played it first time on Game Boy Color, like at nighttime playing it on my Game Boy in my bed one year, I think I remember losing to them. And so it's not like it's a forced win or anything. I think it is organic. And then they move on just the same, they run away, and you go back to Professor Elm, and you tell him what happened, and you even get to name your enemy. I think I just named them Animal or something like that. In the design is like the customization, and then it gives you Pokeballs, I believe. I think this is where it finally gives you Pokeballs, and then this is where I started collecting as many as I could. But I want to go back to the point of the story, right, is that I actually enjoyed like the evil character. I actually thought it was cool, and I think that using the story to like expand the world, the idea of the eggs, is a great use of the story. And all your story really needs to be, if your gameplay is good, is to encourage the player to move forward. And if it's really good, they won't even care about the gameplay if it's good or bad, because the story is pulling them through. But all the story really needs to do is just help them along. And if your story can also be your tutorial, beautiful. That is masterful design. That is what a masterpiece holds, right? You don't want to be like, load up Pokemon and say, play tutorial. Be like, no, I want to play Pokemon, And then if you press no, you haven't been told something. And if you press yes, you have to sit through a wall of text. That's not good design. They had it right with Pokémon Crystal. I want to point out the fact as well that in your return home, you don't have to go through the grass. I thought that was a cool design point where, like, when you're going home from Violet City back to New Barktown, you don't have to go through the grass and go through all the encounters again. So if you are there for the story, you're not held up by the annoyingness of random encounters. But if you'd like the random encounters, they're still there for you. It's so lovely. The design is great. Now, I want to talk about juice. And the idea of juice is that it makes it tasty, right? It's like the little interactions that you have as a player, how you interact with the world, and the feedback it gives you. So I wouldn't say that Pokemon is the juiciest game ever. However, it does have a lot of juice. Like, for example, walking through the grass, it's not like your character is just walking on top of the long grass. There's like an animation of you going through the grass. That is such an important part that we all love that. We all love that. And when you bump into something, it gives you a little sound too. And I think that's an important thing because it actually helped to do a puzzle, or something that kind of was a puzzle, didn't need to be a puzzle yet. When I was in that dark cave and there was like a Pokeball like item thing that I was trying to get to, you don't know you've hit a wall when the whole screen's black unless you can hear it. So obviously if you're literally deaf or something, then this game's going to be a bit annoying because of that. Like, the game has feedback that you can't get unless you can hear it. Like, if you're trying to be quiet in the night when you're meant to be asleep and you've turned it all the way down so your parents don't hear, then you might not be able to do those things. But the fact that there are these little juicy bits that actually change and make the game better, or make the game more of a puzzle, I think helps it so much. Where the juice really shines though is in the battles. Like I said earlier, technically the battles are just menus where you're just pressing stuff and variables are changing. If you boil it down too much, it can be very boring. And I think I've fallen for this trap in the past where you make a very menu heavy and stats heavy game and you don't have enough juice. If you notice in Pokémon Crystal that you don't know the exact stat of your enemy's health. And I think that's interesting. I think that's might be a design challenge that they had to accept, that they couldn't have too much data on the screen or however they did it. They could have a bar, but they couldn't have a text and a bar, and they wanted a bar because a bar is like, if you studied it, it's like seeing how close it is to the end, like feels good. And also it means that you can get away with secrets. As a designer, you can make it so you don't kill them and there's like 1 health left rather than it going down, and like, you know that your guy does X amount of damage versus their X amount of defense, and then them minus that is this, and therefore I should have killed them. You know, it's like, it's more of a feeling rather than an exact annoying thing. So yeah, I think there's like a softness to the design, just purely on that fact that there isn't a health number on the enemy's health. But generally, again, on the attack screen, it's so juicy. Everything, like when the Pokemon come in, they have like a little, animation where they wag their tail or they make their eyebrows do something, or whatever they do, they all have something different. And in the Pokedex as well, they have a call. So when they come in, they have a call. So the birds sound like birds, and like Onyx has this weird screech thing. It gives it life. I think probably at this time, imagine Pokemon Red and Blue being put out in like the 90s, I think, or 1989. I don't know if it came out with the Game Boy, but you can imagine how when they came out, they kind of were doing everything based on the game design, right? But then after that, they had the anime, and then the games were then probably influenced somewhat. Maybe not quite as much as I might be letting on here, but at least a bit, by the anime, right? So they all have like a certain sound and like personality, and it means that these menus come alive. And then even all the attacks. My favorite Pokemon to start with is Chikorita, if that's exactly how you say it, because it has the Razor Leaf, where the leaves come down and then fire off. I think I played Pokemon Mystery Dungeon on the DS, and I think I had a similar starter Pokemon, and it was that Pokemon I liked as well, or like that attack I liked as well with the leaves, and then choom. Yeah, there's things to personally attach to that, yeah, maybe we're missing from our own personal games. Like, for example, in a car game, you might like the look of a car, but it might be the engine sound that really connects with you, right? And it might, if you are on the fence between two cars, you might choose one that has, more of like a guttural rumbling rather than one that's whiny, Or maybe you might choose the whine because it reminds you of an F1 car, for example. Like, there is a personal choice between these two things. Like, if I was going to choose Geodude versus Onyx, if I was to be if it would all be stats, it would be like, oh, I'm going to choose them because I like the numbers to be higher. That's boring. But if you like it because I like his arms, or I don't like his arms, I don't like he doesn't have legs, I like the snake, how it looks like a snake, right? We're creating personal reasons to choose things that are more interesting than just min-max on stats. And I'm realizing that I am not good for this. I don't do this enough. I'm focused too much on the stats when I'm making games. And finally, I'll just mention the color because it's on Game Boy Color. But like, at no point did I ever feel like the color was holding it back. I thought maybe in the beginning I was like, oh, all the characters are red. And obviously in GB Studio, that's, if you were to do that, it would be because they're all using the same palette. In order to save space, you're using other palettes for other things, right? I thought it was fine. Like, if all the characters are red, fine. It doesn't really change much. And like, all of the Pokemon were the colors that you'd think they'd be. So yeah, again, it just looked good. Like, the colors, the animation, the artwork, it made me want to, like, I was walking around some of the houses, right? And like in Professor Elm's place, or in Professor Pokemon's, whatever his name is, he has like a computer with like tape decks in, like classic old huge computers. And I was like, I really love that. I want to draw that. You know, I want to draw that in pixel art. And I remember I kind of did that before with like the computers, Bill's PC. But like, I think that might be actually copyrighted, like those pixels in that like design. Yeah, a whole different tangent. But yeah, now I want to talk about the influences of like where this has taken us in our modern world, and maybe what we haven't taken enough of. So obviously, if we look around these days, there's games like Pal World, I think it's called, where literally it's like monsters battling and it's very cute and whatever. So I think that the feeling of Pokemon generally is still out there, even if it's not in Pokemon. Like, people have these like connections to these creatures that they find their favorites, and like the fact that they like can't have the same movesets means that they are unique. That idea is still very prevalent. But I think that the thing that we've taken most from Pokemon is the XP system. The idea that we kind of have to grind the game, like repeat tasks over and over again in order to improve our situation within the game and get better stuff out of it. If we were to think like a looter shooter like Arc Raiders or something, or Delta Force like I've been playing, where you kind of are encouraged to do the same thing over and over again to make the bar go up, or to collect more things for your party, right? For your stash, for your loadout. And, you know, you're encouraged to do the similar thing over and over again. And it's not just like a small gameplay task either. It's like, technically we could move on, right? In Pokemon, there's the story, and technically you can move on. But there's like this feeling that you shouldn't move on. And that's what I mean by grinding, is like going back over old ground before going forward. Because like, I don't know, if in Space Invaders, technically all you do is repeat the same task over and again. Shoot the alien, right? But I don't think that game demands so much of you, you know? There's not a story that, like, if you were to, you know, not do any of the gameplay and only sit through the story, it would have a certain amount of time. Space Invaders doesn't have a story, right? It has the time it loads in the enemies. But there isn't necessarily a final goal where you would be able to put the game down and say you're done. It's a high score based game. And I think that Pokemon is pulling on those threads of a high score game within a story game. And I can't really think of a game that does it better or before Pokemon, if that makes any sense. Let me know if you can. Obviously there'll be RPGs that probably have this kind of problem, where it's like, if you grind, you're going to level up and you're going to be able to get further in the game, that existed before Pokemon. But I think the thing is that as children playing Pokemon, it's instilled it in us, maybe in the global society, that when you play a game, you have to repeat and go over old ground in order to get further, easier, faster. It's a hard challenge to explain, but I hope you guys get what I mean on that. As we step back and look at Pokemon for what it was and what it is, it began as a game on the Game Boy, which had 2 versions and you could trade between them. And it kind of encouraged people to buy the Game Boy, right? If you're a bit cynical, you could say that's all it was. It was a game to encourage Game Boy sales. And then looking forward, I can kind of see how Pokémon and other Nintendo series have repeated that. Where I didn't actually interact with myself, but the idea of amiibos, I don't even know what they really are, but I know they're collectible and they technically affect a game. And games like Skylanders, I remember my brother had that. And it wasn't necessarily trying to sell a console, but I'm sure it helped console sales. And I think it's easier than ever to make a game like this. The fact that the trading aspect of Pokemon required physically having cables between 2 people who had a similar game, right? But nowadays, you can just do it all online. You don't have to even leave your house. They had much more of a challenge back then. It's like creating an idea. And now I'm saying it, Pokemon Go is exactly this. You'd almost imagine that Nintendo would own the phones that you're on in order to encourage sales of phones, you know? It's very interesting. But game design wise, I think maybe as well, it's encouraged games to just be hours and hours and hours and hundreds of hours long. People expect that of games now because of the games like Pokemon. What do you think about that? Let me know in the comments below. I'll put my patrons up on the screen right now. Thank you so much to you guys. You guys are the absolute best. Remember to like the video if you like the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Let me know what games you want to see next. I know one of you keeps suggesting Survival Kids. I think I'm going to have to play that next because of the amount of times you told me to play it. So stay tuned for that. What are you guys up to? Let me know. And I hope you enjoyed this one. Did I forget anything about Pokemon? Pokemon Crystal specifically? I love this game so much. I might start streaming it maybe. It's so good, and I know that it is so many hours long, and maybe I just do want a collectible, and if you would want to join me for that, let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching to the end, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.